So the Spirit, Faith, and Action Award is intended to honor and to celebrate these women whose examples, insights, and wisdom so powerfully assist others on their own journeys.
The reason I love Sister Joan Chittister so much, and have loved her so much for many years now, because there's this kind of like a bad country music theme song to patriarchy that says women are second in creation and first to sin. And there's very few women in religion who stand up to this credo and say, no, I don't think so. And one of them is Sister Joan Chittister. She speaks it wherever she goes. I've heard her speak it all over the world to the most unlikely places. But it's really because of her faith and her willingness to speak feminine truth to religious power that we are so honored and thrilled to give her this first award of Spirit, Faith, and Action tonight, Sister Joan Chittister.
I thought we ought to take a few minutes at the end of a night as fantastic as this to ask ourselves how we all got here in this room. With all of our differences, what in God's name could have brought us together at this fiery moment in history? And I thought that I ought to talk too a bit about how a Roman Catholic nun ever could get to such a brave and visionary and cutting-edge crowd. And finally, I think we need to ask ourselves, and what do we take out of this night? We've said over and over again, and what will you do about it? And what will you do about it? And what will we do about what? When I heard everybody talk tonight about this definition of feminism and what is my own self-definition, I remembered a time in my own life when I was one of those people who said, well, I'm not a feminist but I really believe that a woman should get equal pay. And I'm not a feminist but I think friendship or marriage should be a merger of equal partners. And then one day I came across this quatrain, and it says, Mother, what's a feminist? A feminist, my daughter, is anyone who thinks or dares to take in charge her own affairs, as men don't think she ought to. That was Alice Dewey Miller, 1932. I knew instantly that I qualified, and I have identified myself as a feminist ever since with absolutely no qualms. Out of that realization came a very young woman steeped in feisty resistance, a girl who learned young what she could only put into words years later, who knew wrong when she saw it and injustice when she felt it, a child who learned young that if you don't recognize your own oppression, you will never understand anyone else's. And then one day I got it. Feminism is not an event. Feminism is a journey through life that shapes women in three kinds of consciousness: personal consciousness, social consciousness, and moral consciousness. All of those are dangerous, let me warn you, and all of them are necessary. Years later, after Vatican II, the Council of the Roman Catholic Church that set out to update the relationship of that church to the world, changes in worship forms and liturgical language and rituals were common. Guitars began to appear in churches. Dance became a liturgical practice, and English became the language of the Mass, of the central worship service of the Catholic community. And so, it seemed obvious, feminine pronouns began to appear in prayers. Rather than pray, "Dear brother," or "for all men," we began to pray in our English-speaking churches for our brothers and sisters, for all men and women. And then, in a special way, women began to realize the meaning of those words themselves, began to understand what the scriptures had always taught when it said, "Let us make them in our own image, male and female. Let us make them." Clearly, God was not only male. God was not simply he. God was life. all life, female life, as well as male life, until 5 years ago, when we got another letter from Rome, forbidding the use of even female pronouns in prayer, forbidding any references to God as mother. The church now also made it officially illegitimate to call God mother. Went back, in other words, to making women totally invisible in the church, even in prayer. What else can that possibly be but blatant sexism, as well as bad theology, that removes women even from the eyes of God, even when the only people in the church are female? Indeed, rejection, domination, and invisibility. Rejection, domination, and invisibility were now too clear to ignore any longer. Rejection, domination, and invisibility was a woman's sacred lot in life. They tried to make us believe that their will was God's will. By the time they got done, God was the only sexist left in the room. And it was wrong. It cannot be right. It will be forever wrong. And so finally, out of one experience after another of rejection, domination, and invisibility, there emerged in me what I think might be the reason I'm on this stage tonight: the moral consciousness that invites us beyond our personal pain to the awareness that you and I are not the only girls left behind, the only women ignored, the only people made invisible by patriarchal societies and institutions that teach men they can get their status uncontested simply by standing on the shoulders of women and keeping women down. Someone somewhere has decided that women need less, that women want less, that women deserve less, that women are worth less. That is a deficient, demeaning, and deadly policy for the entire human race. And women as privileged as we are morally obliged to raise the cries of those whose cries are never heard, as the great women before us have already done for us. So I accept that beautiful award, not as a sign of any accomplishment of mine. Obviously, there's been none. But as a mandate to continue the struggle, as an order not to slack off, as a call never to retreat until every woman is as privileged as we are. I accept it for our grandmother suffragettes who were ridiculed, arrested, and force-fed so that you and I could elect a president last year. I accept it for those women on our streets today, out there tonight, who don't know where breakfast will come from tomorrow, who have no child care, who have no equal pay or equal presence on boards and governing commissions, for the women of Afghanistan who risk their lives to be heard in a post-Taliban world. And finally, I accept this award for the brave women of the Leadership Conference of Women Religious, who, as we speak tonight, are daring to say no to those church officials now who seek to suppress their work for the lives of women around the world. Indeed, this presentation is a clear call to all of us, not to me, to do more and always more, till together we have finally fashioned a world where feminine values, feminine vision, and feminine voice are known, heard, and honored. Because alone we are each weak. We are each not brave enough. But together we roar like a lion. I'm grateful for the new challenge you present with me today, just when I thought I was getting old enough to ignore it. And most of all, I'm grateful for the challenge from you, because my honor tonight goes to you, because I believe that if the people lead, eventually the leaders will follow. Lead on, dear young women.